morning, spending a little bit of time with us. So I gotta circle back to the actions of our Niagara Regional Council this past Thursday, and I know I definitely tuned in expecting one thing to happen, and had a totally different result for what happened in the evening. Councillor Haley Bateman, St. Catharines Niagara Regional Councillor, moved a motion forward, and I want to talk about that before I get to that. How are you on this wonderful morning, Councillor Bateman?
I'm good. I found a quiet spot in my house, so I'm hopeful that it'll stay quiet for this interview. But it was a really difficult night to be there and to be on that council. But so thank you so very much for having me and giving me an opportunity to talk about how the procedures went down.
Yeah, let's talk about the process here. So let's start right at the beginning. I don't want to bury the lead. January 25th council meeting, and so you had arranged for 18 delegates to speak to a motion, effectively asking for. There's a little more to it, but effectively asking for a ceasefire in Gaza for what the United Nations has now said is a humanitarian crisis that's happening there. So you brought this motion forward, helped organize community members that organized delegations, brought them to council, and then can you walk us through what happened in council that night?
Yeah, so just quick correction. I didn't organize delegates at all. I had people email me and ask how they can speak to the motion, and I put them on to the clerk like I do for everybody. So how this started was we've been getting emails for months. Some form emails, some people just, speaking from the heart. Both sets of emails matter because it's, really important as councillors we reply to form emails, although I didn't reply to everybody's. Sometimes people just don't have the words, and I get it when things are very, very upsetting, right? So if they're part of a group and they're working collaboratively to get council to support something, that matters just as much to me. So I was talking to somebody and I thought, God, it's been over 100 days now, and we've shown support for Ukraine. We've shown support for Israel. Truthfully, I don't disagree that we should show support or for people in our community. Now the narrative from my colleagues is that this is international and it has nothing to do with us, but they've changed the narrative without informing me or the rest of the community. So I spoke to the chair. We were at a CYO hockey game separately, but together at the same time. I said to him, I want a motion forward. He said, as a councillor, you can bring whatever motions forward. He's usually a very diplomatic, fair person. So, that was the last conversation that we had. I reached out to him following my, putting the motion in, and I never heard back. So, and I never heard from any of my colleagues. Not one of my colleagues reached out to me, Andrea Kaiser did. Andrea Kaiser reached out to me, and she's also the one who reached out to me following the meeting just to kind of debrief a little bit. So, I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush, but so that's kind of how it happened. And just for clarity, I wasn't organizing anything. It was just a motion I put forward, and people asked how do they speak to it. So.
Yeah, thank you for that important distinction, and I believe that you see it as part of your job, as I believe that all elected politicians should, to represent those community voices. These are community members that would have organized on their own. So thank you for making that distinction. So, but this is where I do want to get into the nuts and bolts of what had happened. So, the councillor had previously Niagara Regional Councillor had previously put a motion forward asking to voluntarily be sanctioned in regards to the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. So this very regional council has in fact weighed in on international issues. There's very much
considerably
precedent.
Right. If you read that motion, it is much more in depth. It makes my motion look a little Mickey Mouse. It is much more in depth than my motion, which is now being criticized for doing the same thing. So yeah.
Yeah, and that was sort of the merit. And so, but this is, again, for listeners that are just tuning in and maybe hearing about this story for the first time, it's not that the delegation spoke, that the delegates spoke and said, we would like to ask for a ceasefire in Gaza. And then the councillors voted and said, hey, we don't think, after careful deliberation, that this is something that we support. It never got to that point. We don't know how any of the councillors feel because it got stopped on a technicality. Is that an accurate characterization of what happened?
No, I think, here's the thing. When we have policies, you can abuse them. And I think this was a very clear abuse of policies and procedures that we have at the region, right? And I'm still a little flabbergasted that Councillor Siscoe would choose or volunteer to read the land acknowledgement, then moments later block this motion. Councillor Ip would second it and then call the question. So call the question means that you avoid any debate. So I can't speak to the motion. I can't speak to anything that they've just orchestrated. And they did orchestrate it. I walked in on a conversation that they were having in the clerk's office with, the chief of staff. And this was very, very much planned. And it's really, really disappointing. And they believed so much in what they were doing that they were willing to put their names to it, right? They were willing to be the people to lead that charge to stop people from being heard. I find that the most repulsive part of all of this. I honestly, I still, to this moment, I think, what in the world? Truthfully, I didn't think that the motion was going to pass. But it has passed unanimously in other areas, not this motion. This motion was written by me. And, I reached out to a ton of organizations, a ton of people, people from Israel, people, part of Judaism, my high school history teacher, the Multicultural Center. So, this motion was, very thoughtfully crafted. We took a stand on October 7th. Well, the chair did unilaterally, right? He made that decision to light up the region in the colors of Israel. So why this is contentious is, we've I've checked all the other boxes. The only reason this is contentious is because what we are asking. So, they're going to have to deal with that, and they're going to have to answer to that. So I'll leave it to them. But the chair has yet to reach out to me.
Yeah, this is really it was really something to watch, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I will share that I watched this with my 16-year-old, and it looked like the gallery was packed with people that were there to see this delegation, and I wanted to hear the conversation. As a parent, I believe that I should look to the leadership in our community to help us sort through these issues, and I've tried to not have a one-sided conversation with my kids, to talk about how there is some nuance and complexity. I never want to minimize the 1,200 lives that were lost in the Hamas attack for sure, but over 20,000 people have now been killed in Gaza, and that it has been labeled by the United Nations as a humanitarian crisis. So I wanted to watch it and to see the motion get shut down, to see Matt Siscoe remove the motion from the agenda, and then to see Councillor Laura Ip call question right away, so there was no debate. I watched it and I was baffled. The other thing is, the camera being shut off immediately. The gallery started to shout shame. People who had come expecting to see something else had a strong reaction. They shut down any kind of feed, and people had to move outside in order to be able to be heard. And to me, the idea that people, the majority of whom I understand are racialized people, tried to have a voice in council, were blocked from having that voice as racialized people, and had to move outside of the building is so symbolic to me as an Indigenous man and as a parent of Indigenous children, and working mostly with racialized people throughout my career, of a certain level of ignorance that I find is appalling. I won't sort of these are just my opinions. I want to make sure that I accurately reflect that. But I have to ask you, how important is it to have the debate that never was able to happen?
Well, I used this following the meeting. Somebody asked me, and I'm not going to mince words. This is power and control exercised in a place where we should be very much cognizant of the power and control that we can exercise and use it in a very responsible way. And given the fact that every single member of our council is white, we exercise a privilege that we have. So this is power and control, and this is white privilege from our council. And I'm not going to mince words. That's exactly what it was. And, we're going to have to talk about it. We are going to have to talk about it, whether we talk about it in mediation at council or whether, a motion similar to this comes back up. So, Chair Bradley accused me of orchestrating this whole thing. And he was, finger in my face, yelling, "You orchestrated it all." He was visibly upset. And I didn't want that to happen. But what he did at the end of the meeting, there was a second recess, Karl, because somebody in the gallery, when the item was scheduled to come up, she started speaking to it loudly enough that it interrupted council proceedings. So he made a second recess, and when they came back, they skipped. Chair Bradley skipped other business, and 4 times I called point of order, acknowledged that other business was skipped, and I did want to speak to other business, and he hammered his gavel down and said that the meeting is adjourned. So I walked over to him to speak to that, because now you're breaking the agenda, right? You are not following any rules of procedure. He can adjourn the meeting, but he was still running the meeting and he skipped over an item. So he's going to have to deal with that as well. And I walked over to him and he was screaming at me. I asked, Chair Bradley, three times I called point of order and you ignored me. And, he was very mad. He felt I orchestrated this entire thing, but truth is, behind the scenes, there was a lot of orchestrating going on. So, and it started with me putting my motion in. A part of my motion was to light regional headquarters, and probably the only thing we could really do to show support, other than give them a platform to speak to this, all the delegates, was light the region the way we lit Israel, for Israel. And that was removed from my unilaterally removed by the clerk. In an email I got, no conversation. It was just, "Thank you for understanding." And I said, that's the part of the motion that needs to go in there. That's like the most important part for our region. It was added back with the note saying that we just had to check our bylaws to ensure that it followed bylaws, which, I mean, come on. Right? It's so ridiculous. So this is very, very layered. Even the accusation that you need to go into a meeting prepared to have a seconder, that's not what I do at all. Yeah. Right? If I draft motions by myself, then I don't get a seconder. I'm hopeful that someone will second it at the meeting, and they usually do. And this I didn't do that because I didn't want to put anybody on the spot. I wanted people just to, my colleagues to just have an opportunity to say, yeah, I'd like to hear this. So, this is so layered. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm all over the place, but there is a lot going on here at council that we're going to have to answer to. So
let's have some further conversations for sure. We're up on time, but thank you very much, Haley Bateman.
Oh, thank you, Karl. Talk soon.
All right, Haley Bateman giving us a crucial update. By the way, the delegations were organized by the Niagara Movement for Justice in Palestine and Israel. There will be an event today if you would like to learn a little bit more in front of the Penn Center. At 1 p.m., there will be a movement asking for peace in Palestinian and Israeli territories. We got to grab a pause. We'll be back. Sunday morning, the weekend edition. let me grab a couple of notes from our last interview. There definitely are a couple texts and thoughts on this for sure. So I want to make sure that I sort out some of the facts from the interview. So yes, the delegations that were to come to regional council that were not able to speak were organized by the Niagara Movement for Justice in Palestine and Israel. Separate from that, there is an organization called the Niagara Palestine Coalition that is having a 1 p.m. rally outside of the Penn Center in St. Catharines today. So just a few things. Also from Salah, our letter campaign from back in October asking Bradley to light the region in the Palestinian flag colors. Almost 100 people have sent in emails on this campaign, and this is where and again I won't tell you how to feel about what's happening in Israeli and Palestinian territories, but I do have to say that again, independent bodies have spoken to the humanitarian crisis that's happening in this level, but also the Niagara region lit their headquarters in the colors of Israel's flag, quote, as a symbol of solidarity with Israel and Niagara's Jewish residents, end quote, a statement by regional chair Jim Bradley. So similarly, residents were asking for the colors of the Palestinian flag to be lit up in front of the region. The city of Edmonton has done this previously. Niagara has approximately 500 residents of Palestinian origin. There is strong support to raise awareness about this. Some of the delegations that were going to come, some of the 18 delegations from across Niagara who have been demonstrating for Palestine and had submitted their request to speak ahead of time, but were denied by council, included the Niagara Movement for Justice in Palestine and Israel, Independent Jewish Voices, and the Niagara Palestine Coalition, amongst others. And so this again, regardless of how you feel on this topic, and so I will address there's some texts that say that this isn't an internet. What business does council have getting into international issues? To address that portion of it, there was a strongly worded, as came up in the last interview, there was a strongly worded support for Ukraine already. So this precedent has been set. This precedent has been set. Councillor Ip and Councillor Siscoe were both involved in council that had already done this. So now the rules have changed and the discussion can't happen. And then shutting off the camera feeds. And I know you can go all over the place on this. You can say, well, then people can orchestrate how to disrupt council, and council's there to do their business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Council's also supposed to be a democracy. We're also supposed to have a free press. And so the idea that these conversations can't move forward, to me, I don't know. I have a hard time making sense of this. But anyways, we've had an opportunity to hear from Mayor Siscoe on air earlier this week about this in advance, talking to Mayor Senzik about how they didn't believe that international issues have a place, or that this could be a divisive is the other. That's the thing, is this could be a potentially divisive issue here. I have to point out that these 20,000 people, mostly women and children who have been killed, this reluctance to ask for a ceasefire, that the majority of these people are civilians, completely innocent people. The majority of these people are racialized people. I have to, that is a material fact, whether you support this or not. There are racialized people that are dying right now, and so this council didn't have time to talk about it. Not on the agenda. Texter says that with all due respect to Niagara Regional Council and your guest, Councillor Bateman, what effect would this, quote, motion, end quote, have with Israel and Hamas? Look how much effect the United Nations has had. Policy abuse. Well, again, effective use of the Niagara Regional Council's time. Come on. And look how much money and police resources the City of Toronto has spent in regards to various protests. Something like $7.1 million. Listen, protests are a part of Canadian life. I believe that non-violent, peaceable assembly is one of the most effective effective ways to really spark the kinds of dialogues that need to happen. So yeah, are we going to spend money on police protests? For sure, but we spend a lot of police money on a lot of stuff. We have this very expensive standing service that is there. This is why this is interesting. A texter said this is why censorship is bad, and was this censorship or not allowing any sort of debate on this topic. The same texter did go on to say though that Councillor Bateman had lost the texter at the white privilege trope. Listen, the elements of the race of the people involved in this, it is an element. This is a factor. White privilege is not a trope. Critical race theory is an academic social science. This is not something that's made up. So I just want to be careful. But read your text. So, all right. So there are the comments. Wow. Great. Sorry. One more comment on the last interview. Wow. Great interview. Very disturbing, but it's the same old system we're used to. Definitely will watch the council meeting now. And that's what I would say. That's what I would say. And I'll leave it at that for this topic before we get back to texts about Betamax and Taylor Swift. I'll leave it at that for this topic. That just watch the tape and watch what happened. If you can watch this. If you can watch and there is a video document of it. If you can watch the process that this was set up, this was organized, this is two prominent. I mean, Councillor Siscoe and Councillor Ip are Councillor Ip, and I will say this that I have a great deal of respect for both Mayor Matt Siscoe serving in his councillor capacity in this regard in that council, and for Councillor Laura Ip. I have a great deal of respect for both of them, but the way this happened, watch the tape of what happened, and if you're comfortable with that, then I have some questions for you for sure in the way that all of this went down. Also the comments from Chair Bradley to Councillor Bateman, this bears further conversation for sure. So I've done my best to try to use the platform that I have to try to raise some awareness about this. We'll definitely archive the interview with Councillor Bateman for sure, and give you a chance to listen back on that one in case you missed it, or in case you want to listen back to it. There's your opportunity to have that conversation. So there it is. I have a few more texts on a number of topics here. But I think I'm going to jump back to our other topics for the day. So again, I appreciate Councillor Bateman, and I do have to say just in the broadest terms, and I know listeners, you're probably like, Karl, you beat this topic to the ground all the time, but this to me is why talk radio exists. The real reason I love having fun with you. Absolutely love talking about all of the cool things that we talk about, but I honestly agree to sit in this chair because I believe that it's a public service to provide the information for you. The fact that I am an Oneida host, that I myself am a racialized man, I first off admit that for sure I bring a certain level of bias and advocacy to a topic like this because of my perspective, but I also think that it informs a perspective that hasn't historically been represented in talk radio. And so the fact that you're listening right now to a racialized host talk to an openly gay regional councillor about a topic of contention, and even if like I misspoke and said that Councillor Bateman had organized it, like there are sometimes small errors or whatever that have made on error or anything like that, even though I misspoke a little bit. I think the fact that we're able to have these conversations is so crucial. It's important that we have a conversation, and so I'm honored that again I could sit here and that I could be a part of it. I hope I represented the information well and in a good way. And again, even if you disagree with me, even if you disagree with Councillor Bateman, I hope that we're never shying away from having the difficult conversations that we need to have. If you think that social change is going to be easy. If you think that we're going to get to where we need as a people, and that the solutions to the problems we face as a society, and there are many in Niagara for sure. We're doing a better job talking about homelessness, about mental health, about addiction, about a lot of the barriers that we have. The issue around the costs of police, the issue around the cost of housing. Whether we raise a tax hike. I talked about forestry on this very show, and I had nothing to do with this. This was local advocacy in our community. Local advocates in our community were able to ensure that St. Catharines Forestry Services remained in-house, even though that resulted in a small percentage of the tax hike, a fraction of a percentage being added to the tax hike levy that was there. I think the talk radio is where these conversations should happen, and that we need to definitely have these dialogues on air. So there are definitely some comments on this. I want to be careful around this topic, not to just auto read the text. So not because I'm trying to edit, or not because I'm trying to exclude any voices here, but I just want to make sure that people are being sensitive, and that making sure those texts are clear on air in an appropriate way. So again, thank you for taking the opportunity to check out the program. Ryan Williams has a thought.
I just wanted to ask, for those who wanted, you said there was a video document of the meeting?
Yes.
Where can people see that?
So it's on Instagram, and what I'll do is I'll share it to my story on the break. So I'm not trying to solicit for followers here, but as listeners may know, we don't have access to the Instagram and Facebook pages anymore, so we can't really put it on our own socials. So I'll put it on my own personal socials. So follow Docs, or look for Karl Dockstader on Instagram, and I'll share the video right now, and you can watch everything that happens. So thanks for setting that up, Ryan. And then the audio will be archived as well.
Yeah, I'll definitely put the interview with Haley Bateman on our website for sure.
Okay, perfect. So there you go. That's actual journalisming. So see, Ryan and I, every now and again, we can actually do a little bit of serious journalisming. So we are going to grab a pause here in just about a minute. I do appreciate the texts that are coming in on this topic. I appreciate you weighing in on local. I've said it just about 1,000 times. So I'll stop saying it now when we jump over to other